This month on the World Sailing Show.
Extreme, frightening, fast.
If you will too much, you capsize.
Nothing to complain about.
Dip me in cream and lock me in a room full of kittens.
They will race 3,500 miles across the Atlantic, from Saint Malo, France, to Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, alone. Aboard some of the most powerful offshore racing machines in the world. The Route du Rhum starts in November, just as autumn hands over to long winter nights and the risk of equinoctial storms. The race to get out of the western approaches and dive south to warmer, more consistent weather is key. But it puts added pressure on skippers to drive hard in some of the worst conditions. This year sees the 40th anniversary of the race, and the entry list is impressive. From classics to Class 40s, IMOCA 60s, and the giant Ultime multi-hulls. The dock walk alone is a spectacle. At the last race, over 2 million people turned out to see the fleet. The boats are impressive, their skippers exceptional, and the stakes have always been high. At times, bad weather has ravaged the fleet, and tragically, lives have been lost. Yet the quest to push harder and sail faster continues. And this year, the bar has been raised even further, as hydrofoils come into the mix. Previously the domain of inshore multi-hulls, now even monohulls are getting in on the act as the IMOCA 60s rise out of the water. Leading the charge are some of the biggest racing multi-hulls in the world, as they too rise up onto foils. It's difficult enough to imagine how a single person can handle a 32-metre-long trimaran alone, and even harder to imagine how they will balance these 15-ton beasts on their foils at over 40 knots, day and night. Even double America's Cup winner Jimmy Spithill struggled to get to grips with this when he stepped into Francois Gabard's world during an offshore training session.
Last 3 hours, extreme, frightening, fast. It's amazing what you get used to. We just had a few hours of sort of 30 to 35 knots of wind, and we were doing up over 47 knots on an autopilot. Definitely a new experience.
So how do skippers fly their giant foiling beasts? The World Sailing Show went to find out and climbed aboard Gitana 17 with skipper Seb Joss. The potential to fly starts in around 18 knots of wind. The mast is canted to windward to produce maximum power in the sail plan.
So we need 4 points to fly, but all the load, 80% of the load is in this foil.
As Gitana lifts clear of the water, the boat speed leaps from 22 to 32 knots. But this is just the start. The leeward daggerboard is raked to produce more lift.
We can change the rake of the foil forward and back with hydraulic ram, so we have that in the cockpit.
The T-foils on the rudders trim Gitana fore and aft, just like an aircraft's tailplane. The foil on the central daggerboard also helps to provide lift.
This is a center daggerboard, but we have a tip on it, elevator with a flap, and it helps the boat to fly you work with the foils. So first we fly by the bow, and after we push on the rudder to put the nose down.
The central control system in the cockpit allows Joss to maintain balanced flight. As the speed increases to 40 knots, the angle of attack of the main foil is reduced. But with the boat in flight and at pace, what happens in the gusts?
If you don't fly too high, just wait, the boat accelerate, go faster.
This is the new world of fast offshore sailing. New territory that requires a new set of skills. The learning curve is steep and the risks are high.
So we have to know where is the limit and what we can do alone what is forbidden, where is the brake, where you can accelerate. So we have a lot of things to learn, and to learn that we have to be on the water and to sail the boat in many different conditions. The worst case today for me is storm. I want to know what's happened in 45 knots of wind downwind, if I can be safe, which type of sail I put, and to make sure I can manage it. It's hard to feel the change when you go under 30, 35 knots, but after you move one flap of 1 degree and you feel immediately what's it doing.
Not only does this year's Route du Rhum celebrate a key anniversary, but it breaks new ground for the race and competitors alike. Two years out from Tokyo 2020, Enoshima, Japan hosted its first Olympic classes event. 35 Olympic medalists and numerous world champions were among the 466 entrants. After 6 days, there were some familiar names on the podium. Among them, Jason Waterhouse and Lisa Darmanin, who took gold in the NACRA 17, while Kieran Badlow and Pina Chen took the honours in the men's and women's RSX. In the lasers, Elliot Hansen took gold, with Marit Baumeister winning once again in the laser radials. Nicholas Heine won the Finn class, while in the men's 470s there was home success for Keiju Okada and Junpei Hokazono. Dutch duo Aphrodite Kiranaku and Annelies van Veen took the women's. In the 49er, James Peters and Finn Sterritt took the honours, with Martin Grail and Kahena Kunz dominating the racing to take gold in the 49er FX. The World Cup Series returns in January in Miami, Florida. As the 52 Super Series fleet prepared for its final showdown in Valencia, picking a favourite looked easy. At each of the 4 previous events, only 2 teams had won. Quantum had taken 3, Luna Rossa 1. The odds for the season's ultimate victor were surely set. Yet the intensity of the racing and the number of teams that had been on the podium throughout the season painted a different picture. Of the 11 on the circuit, 6 had stood on the podium. But runaway leaders Quantum Racing had never won a race at the previous 2 events in Valencia, while Azura, lying second in the overall stakes, had cleaned up in 2012, winning 5 of the 8 races. To skew the odds even further, there was local knowledge aplenty in the fleet, gleaned largely from when the America's Cup was contested here. Among the long list of former Valencia residents, Sled's Ray Davies, Team New Zealand's long-term tactician, knew this area like the back of his hand. Luna Rossa's Jimmy Spithill had completed 2 cup tours here, winning the 2nd aboard Oracle Racing's Giant Try.
I actually spent 6 years in Valencia with the campaign before with Luna Rossa, so it was, I really enjoyed the culture and the place, and it's very, very, challenging sailing on this racetrack.
No surprise then that Quantum Racing were taking nothing for granted. Team owner and helmsman Doug DeVos was clear on that before he'd even left the previous event.
You just never know in this fleet, right? No lead is safe. Everyone is still working on it, focusing on it, so we're going to have it full on, I'm sure, right to the end.
Their answer? To tackle this event like every other and apply their forensic process to every aspect of the final. Behind the scenes, every day started with the same in-depth debrief and a candid discussion.
What we're trying to do is get a condensed snapshot of yesterday, the racing or the training, try and make some conclusions, whether that's on which way was the best way to go on the race course, what the conditions were, and then we move on to the speed aspect. So how were the sails trimmed? What shape did the sails have? What shape did the mast have? And was that right for the conditions?
The level of detail is impressive.
On the masts, when we're taking a picture from behind, we can measure that into 2 or 3 millimeters. At this level, 2 or 3 millimeter difference in mast bend can make a significant difference in speed.
Perhaps more surprising is that they don't keep this data to themselves.
We debrief as a group of 3 boats, Quantum Racing, Onda and Platoon, and they're all part of the Quantum Sales Group. We do a performance debrief every morning. We're totally open. You know, as you saw this morning, we're not keeping data back, and because of that, it's just the rate of learning is fast.
Yet allies ashore became arch enemies afloat. Quantum Racing may have been the favourites, but there were other teams who knew that the event podium and the overall crown were still within reach. As if to prove that point, it was Harm Muller-Spreer's Platoon that took the first win, while Quantum posted a lowly 8th and Luna Rossa a midfield 6th. The poor showing from the front runners provided the kick-start that was required, with Luna Rossa winning the next race and Quantum taking second. By then, normal service had been resumed, and by the end of the day, Quantum had secured the season victory with a day to spare.
I think I just said dip me in cream and lock me in a room full of kittens.
This is the day you've been waiting for all season.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been waiting for it for about a year's time.
With 4 boats separated by just 3 points going into the final day, taking the event win was going to be tough, a fitting finish to a closely fought season. Yet despite this tantalising finale, the weather refused to play ball, leaving Luna Rossa to take the event victory ahead of Quantum Racing and Platoon.
We did it. We win the last event, but unfortunately the podium was still some points in front. We know that we lost some points around the course, but this is the life, this is sport, and the nice thing about this circuit that is the best in the world.
Coming up next, drama in the Southern Ocean, extreme action in San Diego, and glamour in Sardinia. Welcome back to the World Sailing Show. Still to come, crisis at the bottom of the world. Plus, the biggest and best go head-to-head in Sardinia. But first, the AC50 foiling cats may have been dropped for the next America's Cup, but 2 of the sport's biggest players believe that the cats have plenty more to give. Reworked, renamed, and turbocharged, the F50s are back for a brand new world tour. Fast, close, and on the edge. The transformation from heavy, slow monohulls to fast multi-hulls had been a long, precarious, and often contentious one for the America's Cup. But when New Zealand won the trophy in Bermuda in 2017, it was the end of the road for the 50-foot foiling cats. Or so it seemed. But 2 of the most powerful figures in the sport, software tycoon Larry Ellison and 5-time Cup winner Russell Coutts, had other ideas. To them, the Cup Cats were just the beginning, and when it came to their announcement, they weren't holding back.
Streamlined creatures, futuristic technology, precisely calibrated, rising out of the water, harnessing the force of nature and invention. The elements optimized, calculated and digitized. Fluid dynamics fused with aerodynamics. So we fly. Lift and velocity, elevation and balance. Push it harder, grind it faster, turn it smoother. Make the leap and back again. Forget the pain hanging on fingertips. Edging in front with a skipper's split-second 6 sets. Amp it up, burn more muscle, more grey matter, more resolve, national pride. Circuits, cities, weather and adversity. Crowds, enemies, battles and banter mean nothing unless it makes it go faster. Redesign, redefine, recalibrated, reimagined. Sail GP.
Based on the AC-50 cats from Bermuda, Ellison and Coots' team set about building a fleet of 6 identically matched machines that will race in a new global series next year, Sail GP. The launch of the new venture was in the UK at London's Tower Bridge.
Well, Sail GP is really setting out to redefine sailing. It's providing a consistent, year-round, global fan experience. We're going to glamorous locations around the world, some really iconic cities, and we're in super fast boats. These F-50s have been re-engineered, redesigned, and rebuilt, and they're going to exceed speeds of 50 knots, which is just unheard of. I mean, imagine 6 of these teams racing equal boats, all doing 50 knots, all heading towards that first turning mark. I think it's going to be, an incredible event. For our inaugural season, we will stage events in Sydney, San Francisco, New York, and then, of course, here in Cowes, or in England in Cowes, and then onto our final event in the south coast of France, in Marseille.
I think nation-on-nation competition is really at the heart of how you produce a really successful event. So, that combined with nationality rules to make sure it truly is representative of the nation, combined, of course, with also then feeding down into the development opportunities for young men and women in each of the countries that are going to be competing.
The first team to be officially announced was also revealed.
It's hugely exciting to be part of Sail GP, and it's going to redefine sailing, and I think that's something that we can all get behind. And the nation v nation is something that I am used to with my Olympic campaigning and being to Rio. And I think bringing that into this big boat world and these fast, exciting catamarans, I think is just going to be the ultimate experience, and I can't wait to see what it looks like.
The opening event kicks off in February next year in Sydney, Australia. San Diego played host to the penultimate round of the Extreme Sailing Series, where both teams and spectators enjoyed the California sunshine amid the championship battle. Series leaders Alinghi looked on course for a 5th victory of the season before they were outmanoeuvred in a classic match racing tussle with Oman Air on the final day. Trailing by 3 points in the final race of the act, Alinghi would win the race, but they needed SAP Extreme Sailing Team to beat Oman Air to the runner-up spot. However, Phil Robertson and his crew did enough to hold on to second and take Oman Air's first act of the year. The teams now move on to Los Cabos, Mexico, for the season finale. Alinghi lead narrowly, but the 3-way fight for the championship will ensure a spectacular final act. Three months into the Golden Globe race, 9 of the 18 starters had retired from the non-stop single-handed race around the world. Some had a change of heart, others suffered major damage and dismastings. Either way, the message was clear. 50 years after the original, legendary Golden Globe race, the task was no easier. Of those that had pulled out, 3 had headed for Cape Town, South Africa, including Are Vig, who had been dismasted but managed to set up a jury rig. In late September, 2 skippers were forced to abandon their boats. Deep in the Southern Ocean, 1,900 miles southwest of Perth, Australia, a fierce storm system had swept through the bottom of the Indian Ocean. Gregor McGuckin, sailing Hanley Energy Endurance, was knocked down, rolled several times and dismasted in 70-knot winds and 9-metre seas. Then Abhilash Tommy, sailing Thuria, a replica of the boat that carried Sir Robin Knox-Johnston to victory in the original race, sent a short message. Rolled, dismasted, severe back injury, cannot get up. Followed by silence. After trying to communicate further with Tommy, race organisers alerted the authorities. But both skippers were close to the limit of rescue. 2 days later, an Indian Navy long-range aircraft identified Thuria with her mast lying over the side. The following day, French fisheries patrol vessel Osiris arrived at Tommy's boat and took the injured Indian skipper aboard. Shortly afterwards, McGuckin was also recovered from his badly damaged boat. Meanwhile, Jean-Luc Van Heede was the first to pass through the mandatory film drop in Hobart. The 73-year-old skipper was in good spirits.
I am happy with the boat. Downwind is going quite well. The self-steering is okay. Preparation is okay of the success, and I think I was very well prepared.
Now back underway, Van Heede continues to lead the race by more than 2,500 miles ahead of second place Mark Slats. The annual pilgrimage to Sardinia for the Maxi Yacht Rolex Cup is one that always delivers a spectacle. Of the 5 competing classes, the Super Maxis boasted the stars of the show with 3 classic J-class yachts, Valshida, Svea and Topaz. Within this tight-knit group, Valshida has frequently been the boat to beat this season. But this time, it was Topaz that posted a near faultless set of results, taking them to the top of the class leaderboard. In the Maxi class, Grande Orazio, a Southern Wind 82 owned by Massimiliano Florio, led the charge all the way to victory. Meanwhile, in the Mini Maxi class, 2 Italian yachts, Super Nica and H2O, were both successful in a division that was split into 2 groups. And in the Wally class, it was Terry Huey's Lyra that took the top spot. An impressive performance, given that this was his team's first attempt where they faced stiff competition that included a trio of 100-foot Wally Centos. Meanwhile, the Maxi 72 fleet were competing for their World Championship title. As always, the competition was tough. Cannonball, Jetu, Lucky, Proteus and Sorcha all had their eyes on the silverware. But it was the reigning champion Momo, owned by Dieter Schoen, that dominated the racing, winning 6 of their 7 races to secure a second consecutive world title.
We are delighted, I'm proud, I'm quite happy to win here again, and it was always a goal for myself to win here, and this we achieved twice now, so nothing to complain about.
Next month on the World Sailing Show, how the Atlantic played out for the big guns, and glamour in Saint-Tropez.